Welcome to the Liverpool Community Podcast. I'm your host, Chase Johnson Lynch, here on Liverpool Online, and I'm joined by a special friend, special guest with me here, one of my fellow members of the Liverpool Black Men's Group. Big shout out to Liverpool Black Men's Group. But right now I'm here joined by Alan Crawford. How you doing, Alan?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Now, I would have called him Dr. Crawford, but he has no letters at the end of his name. But he is a counselor and trained psychotherapist, aren't you, Alan?
That's true.
How long have you been doing that for?
So I've been working in mental health, addiction recovery, all those things for about 15 years. The last 10, I've been practicing as a qualified therapist, and the last 5 in private practice.
Wow, nice one. And servicing your local community, because like you're very strong within the community center where we're going to talk about our community of L8. Excuse me. Anyway, right. I know I'm going to have to cut that out. Very strong in L8. And one of the things that I was intrigued by, because I saw you at one of our local fairs at the Kumba Amani, the NIA, Black Business Owners Affair kind of thing. And you were involved in being one of the main people for the Black Wellbeing Collective. Is that right to say?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. So the Black Wellbeing Collective. So tell us what that is all about before we say more.
So this is a new initiative that's really in its early stages. I'm kind of trying to pull together a lot of local talent and skills and practitioners to get involved in that. But just a bit of a backstory to it really is that, you know, there's a massive need in terms of Black mental health.
Yeah,
and especially in this community, and you know, maybe we can come back to that. But having recognised that need, and also, you know, as a individual therapist working with people one to one and with couples too, that work is important and it helps people to heal. But what I kept coming up against was the importance of community.
Yeah,
you know, I'm as you say, I'm big involved.
Or shared experience, would you say?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Because you do circle work, is that right?
That's true. So that's going to be a big part of the Wellbeing Collective. So when I'm working with people on a one-to-one level, often I'm very aware of the fact that most therapies are blind to, or kind of turn a blind eye to, structural, societal issues, collective issues, and they kind of locate the problem inside the person. Like, not to diss CBT, but CBT is like the classic example of that. You know, if you change the way you think about things, everything's okay. And that's not always the case when we live in a racist, patriarchal society.
Well, each race has its own, shall we say, weight, you know, from its past. So it's like, it's very difficult to kind of like choose one form of therapy or a way of dealing with things because... Well, especially if you're not within that same category, would you say? Yeah. Even like if it's mixed race, you know, like now you have 2 weights.
Absolutely. That's something I'm very interested in. As somebody who's mixed race, is kind of the particular issues that the mixed race community face. You know, whatever label we give ourselves, it is another thing. People label, identify differently, but having that as you say, 2 weights to process and to deal with. And the issues around identity, around belonging, around like cultural disconnection, being, you know, too white for Black spaces sometimes, too Black for white spaces, you know, all of that stuff that lots of us go through who are dual heritage. But in terms of the Black Wellbeing Collective, we're kind of using the term Black in like a wide, open sense. Anyone of kind of, particularly anyone of kind of African or Caribbean descent, people of colour, as you might say in America. We don't really use the term here so much, but people of colour, and it's
also not gender specific because it's male and female, isn't it?
This is open for men and women.
Yeah, no, that sounds really good. I mean, and as a new setup in a new collective, you're saying that you guys are you started like a social media presence, haven't you, on Facebook and the things. But you have a first meeting coming up on the 31st of July. Tell us about that.
Absolutely, yeah. So the meeting's just to sit down with the people who are interested, who buy into the idea, to come together and talk about the ideas. But the idea I'm kind of throwing out there, and it's all up for discussion, is around a decolonised collective approach to mental health.
Oh, well, you're going to explain that one, bro. you do too many big words together in a sentence.
So decolonize. So going back to this idea that one-to-one therapy is, well, it's one-to-one, it's individual, it's focused on you, your ideas, your beliefs, your feelings. What I've been realizing as I've been researching and reading, and also my own involvement with the community in LA, the Black community, the Caribbean Centre, is that, yeah, therapy, individual therapy, traditional therapy, leaves the community out of it and leaves the collective out of it. But when you look at that from a kind of decolonial perspective, so the idea, the very Western idea that the individual is the centre of everything isn't a given. And in lots of traditional and indigenous cultures, that isn't the assumption in the same way. So in African and Native American cultures, for example, there's a much greater emphasis on the community and the collective, and people heal within the context of that collective. But here in the West for a long time, and it seems to have got even worse since the 80s with Thatcherism and all the rest of it, there's a massive focus. It's all about the individual, my success, my achievement, my accolades.
Sounds very American 80s.
Well, yeah.
The me generation, It's all about me. But I mean, like, the deal though is that, like, I'm just curious about this because I don't want people to get lost in the sauce. Because I think we don't really have these conversations, one around Black mental health, but the other one about dual heritage mental health. Because especially with Liverpool is a strong dual heritage city.
Yeah, absolutely.
People don't want to seem to admit that, but it is, especially in the L8 section,
sure.
and, sprinkling out from there. And I've always found it curious, like you're of dual heritage yourself, right? And everything, the kids that are in their generation, like they may have white brothers or sisters, and everything like that. And what happens when they go to school? Do you know what I mean? And their Black brothers or sisters getting picked on. Yeah. I mean, have you ever heard of situations like this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's Liverpool 8 conceptualizes race in it, when it's quite unique, because the history of Liverpool 8 is very unique, isn't it? And I've been on here before with you a long time ago with the Black Men's Group talking about identity and the fact that,
please, look for that. It's on Spotify and on Facebook and everything. The Liverpool Black Men's Group has done a series of interesting talks around this topic, but that's why we're bringing it back. Go ahead.
But the consensus around the table for most people there was that, in Liverpool, even the mixed race, dual heritage, light skinned people still call themselves and consider themselves Black. And that's not been my experience. My family come from Liverpool 8, but we grew up elsewhere. And I've always identified as mixed race, as dual heritage. And there's a whole debate around that we could have. But yeah, there are a lot of mixed race or dual heritage people in the Liverpool 8 community, probably most of the community,
right.
I'd say.
Well, you're pretty, how should we say, strong in your, is it Bayesian? Is that part of your mixed race heritage?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I mean, you're pretty proud of that. And I know you've been involved with several different, events or at the Caribbean Center. And we should mention that more, the Caribbean Center. But, and it's just kind of like having that pride in one side of your heritage. Does that cause you to deny the other side?
That's a really good question. And that's a question that often asked, isn't it, when people choose to identify with the kind of minority part of their heritage more. There's reasons for that, but it's complicated, isn't it?
Well, I think everybody wants to understand. You want to take pride in the X factor of your gene, right? Or you're tired of being berated or abused for that X factor, Eugene.
Yeah.
You know, so when you're mixed race and people are like making fun of the, you know, the darker side or whatever and stuff like that. And this is what I'm just trying to say is like, I really hope that like people can understand that I'm tired of these like names of people of color and I don't buy into it, bro. You know, but like the deal is the fact that I think we are all a product of our ancestors, and we're all different, and we're not at face value. But unfortunately, the darkness of our skin seems to make it so. Absolutely. Right? But like you look at me, you see a black man. You know, you hear me, you see an American. But I'm actually very strongly Native American because of my grandmother on my mother's side and my father's side. You know, so the matriarch of the family are both Native Americans. One's a Lakota Sioux and the other's Blackfoot. So good God, man, I'm an amalgamum. But it's like, you know, like if I actually celebrated that and just say, hey, I'm Native American, do you know what I mean? And then people go, nah, you're black, man. What are you doing? And I'm like, well, gee, why do we even have to identify? When are we going to get past the millennium? Right? I'm sorry I'm on the soapbox, but when are we going to get past that? I mean, dual heritage is actually something that is acceptable to me to be called that. But the mixed race, the thing, we're all just people. Yeah. You know, I mean, but you must encounter this. I mean, when you're dealing with clients and stuff, especially with mixed heritage, I mean, I wouldn't say what's the most common thing you've heard, because I mean, you could be here all day. But what do you think around, like, is that the common problem that people have is in choosing the identity that they relate themselves to?
Kind of. If I could answer a few things you said there, because I'm really interested in quite a few of the points you made there. So, you know, it is interesting that when one of the heritages that make us up is black, that we tend to collectively identify with that. And that is interesting. But for me, I think psychologically, you know, you think about Carl Jung and integration. Technically, we should accept and integrate all parts of ourselves. And I think that becomes difficult when the mix within you is black and white, because of the historic oppression, slavery, everything else. You know, it's hard to for that to live inside you. It's like you have both the oppressor and the oppressed living inside you, and you've got to, like, the tension between that can be quite difficult and quite powerful at the same time. But this thing, you know, you mentioned my kind of passion for my Bayesian culture, heritage, and also about ancestors. And I guess part of the reason through this part of my journey I've been really connecting with my Caribbean heritage, and particularly by Bayesian Barbados, is because I think for me there was a big sense of cultural disconnection from that. And I was just reading the other day on Instagram, I think, actually, some new research has come out, and The Voice shared it, saying that feeling disconnected from your culture actually is a factor that contributes to bad mental health. Having a strong sense of culture and where you come from is a protective factor for feeling whole and complete. And because my family, you know, we moved and grew up in a white area, that was something that I felt was missing in my life, and something that I've been on like a journey to explore and connect with. I've tried to connect with it at various points in my life, but it was really after George Floyd died that I took a deeper dive into connecting with that side of my heritage. A lot of people have done that. Went on a family, genealogy thing, tracing my family roots, connecting with my family in Barbados. You got uncles, aunties, cousins out there still. Went and spent some time with them. But then the other thing you said about ancestors too is massive, because that's something that I want to really bring in to this Black Wellbeing Collective, is because essentially, going back to the idea of being decolonised and taking the emphasis off the individual and back to the collective, that's a very African idea. And it's not exclusive to African, culture. It exists in Native American culture too, and in some Eastern cultures also. But this idea that it's not all about the individual, it's about us, it's about we. And it can be encapsulated from an African perspective through the concept of Ubuntu, the sense that, we only exist in relation to each other. I am because you are. And And that is something I really want to embed into this Black Wellbeing Collective. Not religion, everyone's open to their own beliefs and traditions, and I don't want to take anyone's beliefs off them or push any beliefs on anyone. But I think we can draw on these ancestral African practices, like pouring libation, like honouring the ancestors, like focusing on the we rather than the I, and really bring them in. Because I think within all people of colour, to use that phrase, there's a yearning for that, even more so than in the white people that I know and work with as clients. It seems like it's in our DNA, it's in our heritage, in our ancestry, to be part of groups and collectives.
I mean, what I think is like what's interesting. Well, I think what's interesting, and hopefully maybe you become part of the Black Wellbeing Collective is the idea around research and Black excellence. Because I think we have a very strong whitewashing scenario of history. Goes way, way back. Goes back to Napoleon and the pyramids. Wiping down the walls and breaking off the noses of the statues of the African kings and everything like that. And any blackness was wiped away. And like, if you ever been to an Egyptian exhibit anywhere, you'll see these statue heads, but they'll have no noses. They're on their face because they want to get rid of the lips, the bridges, and all that kind of stuff. But like, when I have, as an adult, chose to research, and I think everybody should, I'm more fascinated by our history than ones that we never heard of. So we're never taught these things in school, we're never, and even the huge events like Red Summer and Tulsa, Black Wall Street, all that other kind of stuff. We find it weird to find out that Black people came over here not on slave ships, but by other means. We find it weird that Black people had made huge strides of achievement in science, medicine. Even The Birth of a Nation, everybody chooses to hate on that film, but they don't realize what the problem is that the filmmakers, D.W. Griffith, hated on the success of Black people, and he makes fun of it. And that's why you say, oh, why are these people all doing it? It's because they are actually powerful. They were politicians, they were in charge of the laws, because they had their reparations. They had 40 acres and a mule, all that. And people don't even understand what that's all about. And when you hear about these things, you're like, what? You're flabbergasted. So when you hear about African kings and warriors and all that kind of stuff, you're like, it blows my mind. So instead of choosing to ignore it, I think we should choose to celebrate it. We should learn more about it. And the idea of a well-being collective should be about education as well. Because I would like to be a part of this well-being collective, but I just think that we need to spend our time not just educating our young, but our adults.
Absolutely.
We're the ones who are lost in the sauce, when it comes down to identity. So last thing I was saying, that would you agree that because of the negativity of growing up with the identities that we've had, the factor of our mixed race heritage, that we felt like, what side am I on and everything like that. I don't want to be on that side, because everybody keeps abusing me on that. Do you think that if we actually changed our mindset to the more positive nature of our people that came before us, would that help to elevate then not just us, but the younger generation to follow?
I think so, yeah, because I think, people often think about Africa as this backward place.
Oh, God, man.
Or as like the home of slaves. But actually, if you look, I'm preaching to the converted, this well, but, the Africa has a rich history and beautiful culture. And that's, part of the well-being, I think, and having positive mental health as a Black or dual heritage person of African Caribbean descent, is having a positive sense of identity about who we are, where we come from, who our ancestors were. And these were people with wisdom. These were people who have, you know, African proverbs contain as much wisdom as any Eastern or Buddhist proverb I've heard, you know, but they don't get the same kudos.
Yeah.
You know, African spiritual practices, you know, really beautiful, really rooted traditions and cultures that we can draw on. And then, yeah, bringing it back to the dual heritage thing, I must admit it's challenging, but I'm trying to become more integrated in terms of also honouring and having connection to my Irish ancestors, because that's the white side of me is the Irish side, the Celtic thing. But instead of having that kind of shame or confusion inside of myself, what I'm trying to work on in and out of therapy is, you know, actually that side of me too deserves connecting with and acknowledging. And, you know, the Celtic people had also their own traditions and culture and all the rest of it. So, you know,
Is that hence the hairstyle, bro?
Well, it's a hybrid, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you know, hey, I mean, you know, yeah, all the power to the people. So let's go to the Caribbean Center, because you're not only a trustee with the Caribbean Center, but you're also the secretary and stuff. And like you're a strong member involved in trying to bring community back into the community. I mean, so what's the history of the community center? I mean, Caribbean, you know, Caribbean Center. What's the history of the Caribbean Center? I mean, like that you guys are trying to reignite in the community.
So the center's been there since the 70s. You know, it was supposed to have been a gift to the Caribbean community, the West Indian community in Liverpool at the time. People were meeting in clubs, in basements, in different buildings.
Shebeens.
Yeah, and it was about giving them a space, you know, a space for them to own and manage, and it existed and it thrived for you know, a number of decades. But then it kind of fell into disuse.
Yeah,
and at one point I think it was closed for 8 years or something, 7, 8, 9 years, and was literally, you know,
overdrawn. Like, I mean, grass.
Sure.
Covered,
homeless people sleeping inside it, everything. And there was a protest group that kind of, you know, there were talks about developers taking over the land, you know, it's a prime piece of land. I'm sure a lot of people are interested in it. And developers wanted the land. The board at the time were considering agreeing to that and having another centre built elsewhere. But the community kind of rose up really and said, you know, this isn't what we want. We want this centre on this land. A protest movement was formed that kind of literally, you know, sat in the centre, occupied it, prevented that from happening, formed a new board, and then they were the board that then recruited me to get involved, and I've been involved kind of since then. And we're still fighting, you know, to save the centre. We're still negotiating with the council to get a lease.
Still trying to raise funds.
Yeah. Well, we're not in clear water yet. You know, the legal negotiations to get a lease are complicated. We're a small grassroots community organisation. You know, we don't have major funds. Nearly all of us are also working whilst trying to do this.
Yeah, that's true.
And we are trying to raise funds through events at the centre, and we are raising funds, but we need the support of the community to keep it going, to save the centre, so it can return to like a thriving hub for, you know, Caribbean and African Caribbean culture and heritage in Liverpool 8, but also the city as a whole.
So what's how can people like find you guys on social media as far as support? Like, is it like Save the Caribbean Center or Caribbean
so on
Center?
Facebook there's a group called Save the Caribbean Center. You can search and find, you know, things there. We also have a presence on Instagram. I think the handle's African Caribbean Center L8, something like that. And you can see all the updates going on. Our next big event at the minute is Jamaican Independence Day.
Yeah, Jamaican Independence Day. So that's the 6th of August.
6th of August, yeah. There's going to be a daytime event, a partnership between the Caribbean Centre and Culture Deck, family-friendly event. It's kind of free.
Always got the food again, though.
Yeah, there's going to be food. Food, Bounty Castle, kids' activities, all those things.
Yeah.
And then a nighttime kind of dance and events for adults.
Yeah. Nice. I mean, like the thing about it is the Caribbean Center, it's open every day, right? Isn't it? Like, it's like 12 to 5 or something like that.
Yeah, somebody there 12 to 5, Monday to Friday, Saturday too, I believe.
I mean, it's just kind of like, for now, it's just kind of like as a community place to chill, got a nice outdoor, garden area and all that kind of stuff and everything, and it's definitely a cause worth getting behind if you can, because they're going to be starting to GoFundMe soon as well and everything. So please look out for that and show your love and support and everything. So before we go though, basically just to finish off on you were saying that it's very important Black mental health in dual heritage community, right? And I asked you, like, how important is that? So tell us that, your final thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I think depends how deep you want to go. Like, obviously,
we're already in the well.
So, at one level, you can talk about, the statistics,
Says what?
Statistics.
Oh, statistics.
Yeah. I can't say that word.
Okay.
Black people, including dual heritage, usually as well, are usually at the bottom end of most statistics that you don't want to be the bottom end of. And that's also true in terms of mental health. You could also look at, Black people often don't feel safe or understood in mainstream services. Mm-hmm. Often there's a greater sense of stigma in the Black community, especially in Black males, around reaching out for support around mental health, because we have this thing about masculinity and not showing weakness, which in my experience is even stronger in the Black community than in white people.
I love showing weakness. Or vulnerability.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the one.
Well, it's all... See, it's the word, isn't it? Vulnerability versus weakness.
Well, people hate that word, though. But even
what do you mean? Hate vulnerability?
Yeah, I think so.
That's only because if I'm Superman and you had kryptonite, yeah, I would hate it.
And then if you want to go like deeper dive into it, I think there's also obviously issues around racism that play into mental health, and there's also, if you want to go even deeper, I think in terms of intergenerational trauma, ancestral trauma. Most of us in this community have slavery in our ancestry. And that, I think, lives in us and lives in the Liverpool 8 community. Also, in terms of if you look at the collective rather than the individual, look at the traumas Liverpool 8 has been through. The riots, the fights, the battles, the race riots going back to, the early 1900s, never mind the 80s ones.
Yeah.
There's been serious...
You're talking about the Red Summer.
There's been serious conflict and trauma in the Liverpool 8 community, as well as within individual people of colour,
Yeah. Well, no, exactly. I mean, that ancestral trauma you speak of is very clear, because, you got this kind of like invisible barrier, like up a Parliament Street, you know what I mean? Where like a lot of local people from LA, are tremulous around going past that line.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And everything. And, since it's been ring fenced off, it's still ring fenced mentally.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
It's funny. There's a similar line. I live on High Park Street, just off Park Road, and Park Road's a similar line.
Yeah.
On High Park Street, very diverse. As soon as you cross Park Road into Dingle, it's a different world.
Well, it's the Mason-Dixon line.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just that road. It's because it's Princess Road, and Princess is really the Mason-Dixon line, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because that's where a lot of people came from one side to the other side, and everything, and and it's old values, because it's like I've always lived on the Dingle side, but then it's like I'm like, oh, what's going on, but it's like the old names of the streets, like the Holy Land and all that. You're thinking, what's going on? Like where the TV show Bread was, and everything, and but it's just hard to believe, and when you walk the streets, you know what I mean, you still getting like when people drive by in cars,
it's
still
crazy.
getting shouted out at or something.
It's crazy. One of my students, because I teach counselling as well at the minute, and one of my students was telling me the other day, she was a white woman with dual heritage kids and lives in Dingle, and she said, like, literally about 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago, she had racial abuse shouted at her and her kids, graffiti left in her garden on a fence. That's still going on now, and this is part of LA. It's crazy.
I know, man. I mean, shout out to the moms, because it's like there's so much strength in some or most of these women, you know, and the things that they had to endure, not just the abuse that they had to endure, but the trying to transfer the knowledge of your heritage to your to children's heritage. I didn't mean you personally, you know, so that way they feel that they're inclusive of their history and stuff. I mean, you must experience some of that. Right?
Absolutely. You remind me of something that Malika said when I first kind of got involved with the Caribbean Centre. She said in Liverpool 8, a lot of the white mums are considered black too, because they've been at the front line of that battle. You know, a lot of educating and protecting those dual heritage kids, but also, you know, fighting alongside them against racism, you know.
Yeah. Oh, no, definitely. But again, that's where the solidarity should be, is that like, that we should, you know, be more like on the same side. It's like, when are we going to get over these old prejudices, you know, and just deal with the mixture of being in the same bowl of mulligan stew, so to speak. You know what I mean? I mean, I just look forward to the day when it doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? I mean, not that it doesn't matter, like your race doesn't matter. I meant like that the negativity that needs to be spouted at a person because they're different doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? Because if we are the same, we have the same bloodline running in our veins and everything like that. You know, that should be the unique factor. You know, of like you know, when you have Indian blood or black blood or Chinese blood or whatever kind of blood you want to say that is in your parents, cousins, or whatever. You know, that. I look forward to seeing those family pictures of people with all like different colors in the one picture. Do you know what I mean? Because and no, you must know these families yourself. You know, I have family like that myself. You know, black, white, Chinese, all that kind of stuff. So in that aspect is that if you have a family like that, why do you choose negativity on top of it? Unless you're jealous. Unless you're jealous, you know, then that's also a problem too. But then it's a story for another day.
I hear what you're saying, definitely. But to get to what you're saying, I guess that's where the healing's got to come in, isn't it? Sometimes white racists will make almost a similar argument to what you're making, ironically, and say, let's just forget about that. You know, race shouldn't matter anymore. We're all one. But that, I know that's not what you're saying, but when they say it, they're coming from a place of like, let's just brush this under the carpet and forget about it. It's negativity.
Well, that's what I said. We had whitewashing already for hundreds of years. We don't need that again.
To get to that place you're describing, which I agree is like an ideal, where people's culture and heritage, and I know you're all about, you know, black excellence and supporting that, and it becomes about that rather than black trauma. But to get to that point, we have to heal the trauma, don't we? Obviously.
But how long though, bro? I mean, right now, like you know, I'm hoping to get involved with the Save Remembrance Day this year, and everything else like that. And I've been working with the museum and stuff, you know, as a filmmaker and stuff, and I've been always promoting. Can we stop? You know, I mean, Liverpool, listen, you've already washed yourself of your guilt. I remember 20 years I've been here, and I remember when they apologized for slavery, right? Because they built the boats here and all that kind of stuff. But how many times are you going to do it every year, right? So they have Slavery Remembrance Day. But then in that aspect, it's like, okay, let's look at excellence. Let's we've done it. We know about it. You're ashamed. Got it. Now let's move from that, so that way we could grow as a community, you know, and then we rise. We're only keeping ourselves down with the chains of our memories of our, you know, past that we feel guilty about. I mean, I don't know. Do you agree or disagree?
I hear you. I think it's complicated. I hear you.
It's complicated.
I absolutely hear you. You know, there's loads of people talking about, you know, blackness shouldn't always be associated with negativity, with trauma, with disadvantage, with racism. You know, that itself can lead to negative identity and negative mental health. It should be also about joy and excellence. I totally hear you. But then another part of me, like just playing devil's advocate, maybe the therapist in me thinks, well, you know, let's say in a couples therapy session, before somebody can get over the fact that there's been some infidelity or some issues or whatever else, some issue in the relationship, before that can be got over, the other party has to feel completely heard and understood and validated. And what I see, I think, in the community and tell me if you think I'm wrong here, but I feel like people don't feel fully validated in it yet. I feel almost like any apology or any kind of, it's like when the Royals went to the Caribbean recently, and it was widely publicized. They wouldn't say sorry for slavery. They kind of talked around it and said things like, it's a sorrow that this happened, or we regret that this happened. But I think a lot of people feel like it's never been fully, deeply acknowledged. And certainly there's been no reparations. And certainly there's been no, economic stimulus into the black community to try to eradicate the practical effects of generations of being discriminated against. And I don't know, part of me feels like that needs to happen before we can move on. But at the same time, let's talk about black joy, black excellence. Let's talk about diversity, let's talk about all those things as well. But don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you present the chicken and an egg scenario. Yeah. I mean, we can't do this without doing that. And like in that aspect is that like because on the one hand is we're talking about 3 generations in, pretty much 3 to 4 generations in. So when people talk about reparations, I mean, like actually, what am I giving you reparations for? Your ancestors were given reparations. They were given 40 acres and a mule, and unfortunately, white people stole it from them. So reparations was already given for slavery. A lot of people sweep that under the rug. I mean, you have to only just look at like the 1900s when black people were more successful than their white counterparts because, like the Dutch, the Irish, the Norwegians, those people, they pissed their money away. I mean, like they also suffered indentured servitude and slavery, and in that aspect though is that like, so who nobody gave us anything. And so why should these people get stuff and everything? And that's why they've had the attacks, because of their anger, their jealousy, their rage, and everything. And black people still continue to strive under such adverse issues for like about 50 years until it got to the point where it's like, can't deal with this anymore. I mean, the whole blockbuster stuff for the 50s, housing I'm talking about and everything else like that. Know your history, people. But like in that fashion is that, we're just saying is as far as reparations concerned is like, let us like do what we do because we strive under most adverse issues, black people, I'm saying. But it was just too much. Yeah, it was just too much. So maybe if you want to talk about that new form of reparation to that's a whole nother conversation.
It is, and
but then people gave up, is what I'm trying to say, because then with the 50s, 60s drugs, it's like it's all been plots to keep a race down.
It is, but I hear what you say as well. You've got a really valid point about. We need to also stop looking to the past and start looking towards the future and take responsibility for ourselves and our own healing individually and collectively. Yeah. And I guess that's part of what this Wellbeing Collective is for.
Exactly.
We can't.
How can we work together to keep each other strong?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all of these different practitioners, whether they're kind of yoga instructors, whether they're therapists, whether they're nutritionists, whether they're do African drumming or whatever it might be.
Creative media.
Bringing all that together, and grassroots fundraising, doing it as a collective thing, no money changing hands, kind of for us, by us, collective thing, even trying to squash the hierarchy of, well, I'm a practitioner and you're a recipient, trying to really level it and make it, this is all of us healing together, meeting together once a month or once a quarter, whatever it's going to be, to create a healing space rooted in the collective, rooted in, that idea of Ubuntu, and rooted in African-inspired tradition, spirituality, culture.
Yeah.
It's positive, it's healthy, it's healing, it's holistic.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, listen, man. I think we share some real deep thoughts with people, and hopefully, if you yourself out there are interested in the Black Wellbeing Collective, please look out for it on social medias. Look out for this upcoming meeting on the 31st of July. But then also just look at, like, because they're having conversations on the sites as well, communicating threads and everything. And I mean, like, if you enjoy this kind of talk, whatever, like, just keep it coming, man. You know what I mean? Because I think that we need the discourse. So I really appreciate you joining me here today on the couches, Alan. It's been really enlightening conversation, hopefully, and everything. And I'm enlightened, you're enlightened, hopefully you're enlightened too. So, like, either way you look at it is. Thank you, Alan. I'm Chase Johnson Lynch. You've been listening to the Liverpool Community Podcast here on Liverpool Online. And you know what? We out of here.